Hey guys, I am telling you, this is like the fourth time I've tried to make this video. It's almost as if it is not meant to be made. I promised you a campfire story, dream thing, and about the nations that are going to be impacted, or the states, I should say. So let's try this again. So on California, I saw three meteors hitting under the Baja and Mexico border in the ocean, under the ocean by the Baja Mexico border. On the upper north or higher coast up, I also saw a tsunami come in. The water had this weird color. It was like your ocean color, like not really dark blue, is blue, and it had a purplish cast. I also was called to help people to get out of there and to bring them into safer places. And so I don't understand everything about my dreams, but I do know I've had them ever since I was a little girl. And so also Utah. Now, I went to Utah. I didn't grow up there, but we moved over there. And so in Utah, I saw like the stars had fallen like hail, or I'm not sure if it was hail or like a meteor shower, but whatever it was burning through the blades of grass. It was burning through the trees and through rooftops. I also saw um, yeah, Fort Duchesne and uh, Starvation Reservoir. My dad had property over there. And I was watching tornadoes come in the dream, and where the highway was, there would be a tornado, one on each side of the area. So like you couldn't really get away from them. And they were big. They were EF scale tornadoes that I watched coming in. Sorry, that light is just obnoxious, but my phone screen is blurry. Anyway, and two came down at once, one on each side of the road. You weren't going to outrun these suckers. They were fast and they were big, and they were getting worse because it went from two coming down at once later to four. And it was happening so fast. It was like they all were in unison almost. It was so weird. And then as they landed, I heard like the crashing of plates, like china plates breaking and crashing. Not that I really know what that sounds like because I've never really had china, but anyway, I heard like the breaking of china plates, and I was told by someone that's the tectonic plates breaking up that you're hearing. We do know that Yellowstone goes off, but not during this time. I'm not sure. I think how much later it goes off after that, but I know that it goes off. I know the San Andreas fault line in California is really aggressively active, like really bad, just like it was back in the time that it leveled out that Coliseum or whatever. I know that it activates all these different little earthquake fault lines all along the areas where they're connected, and so there are massive states that are being, just they're connected together with these fault lines, which is nuts because they all become active. And so we lived in Provo, and where we lived, we lived over, it's hard to say, like over by Provo River area, and the south half of it over by East Bay on the other side. So you had Squaw Peak this way, and then you had over here you had another area. We were in between that. So Squaw Peak would get like your little rumblings from the Magna earthquakes. And so this time around though, this one earthquake was on the opposite side of what everybody thought it was going to be, and it was big enough that it went from our area down through Payson and things like that. It was huge. And I know New Mexico, where I grew up, they have like dormant volcanic mountains in Deming where I was. They had Red Mountain and Black Mountain or Snake Mountain, and they were inactive, but they became active. And it was so weird because this impacted a dream I had as a little girl, because they knew about the Mimbres fault line, but they also knew about the Rio Grande fault line, but there was one they had missed there was a fault line they had missed. I was told they missed a fault line, and whatever one this was the one that San Andreas impacted the most. And it was in such a fashion that the whole entire state of New Mexico experienced these massive quakes and rumblings, and for like 3 days. And I know that I also saw, minus with those mountains becoming active, where we used to live in Deming, Little Floridas were this way, Spring Canyon was this way. They all became one massive mountain chain facing this way. And so the desert was so dry as a little girl. I remember seeing cracks in the earth, and when the monsoons came, it would fill in those cracks, and the sand would get like clay-like first before it just ran. But this mountain chain that got moved and changed had started growing palm trees. It became subtropic, and so if you know Deming is not subtropic at all. And so I saw that in New Mexico. I also know that in New Mexico, I heard that it said that woe to the inhabitants whose nation does Del Muerte or relies on Del Muerte, for there shall arise a bitter oppression. And so I know that while this is going on, I'm not sure if it's a war between New Mexico and Mexico, because they both celebrate Del Muerte. But it said, I heard the voice say, woe to, the land whose nation relies on Del Muerte. There shall be a bitter oppression. So with that going on, I know Arizona's impacted. I also know that I have seen Galveston. Okay, so Galveston, I've never been there, but I'm standing on a sandy dune overlooking the ocean in Galveston in my dream. A wind had been blowing because my skirt, my dress, or whatever it was, the wind was ruffling with it, but then all of a sudden it was silent. It was quiet, and it was so quiet. There wasn't even birds that could be heard, and I felt the one drop of rain. And I'm overlooking the ocean. It's dark in the back. It's dark and rolling, and the skies are angry. They're black and just angry. And I saw the ocean rising. I saw it coming into the shore of Galveston. Does this happen to all of Texas? No, there's areas where it doesn't along the coastline, but I know Galveston is one of those that it does. Also, in order for the storms on the East Coast, the tsunamis coming in there, I know that the Canary Islands become really active, and it increases like tsunamis there too. But I know Florida, everybody's like, well, Florida, big deal, it happens all the time. They have hurricanes. Well, that's not the only thing it had. It had a hurricane and a tsunami come in. And so I'm in this area of Florida, which I've never been, mind you, there, but I've seen the beach houses that are on the beach facing the ocean, and out the back of them, it's like terraced up yards and back. And so I know I was in the kitchen, I was looking out the window, and there was these families playing out in the ocean, right near the coast, this golden sunlight over their head. And I'm banging on the window. I wasn't allowed to go out to warn them at the time, and I don't know why, but I'm banging on the window trying to get their attention, and it's not working. And the skies, they're angry, they're black, and they're purple, and they're rolling. And so I went and was allowed finally to go out on the beach, and I'm out there running along the coast, warning everybody, pointing to the darkness and back, and they finally started seeing it, and they were rushing into the beach houses. We barely got them up into the terraced areas before the waters had come in. And so the oceans will walk eventually. I know there's another shutting coming, and it's going to be worse than COVID, and it's going to be longer. I know it's going to be involving Jacob's sorrows, and I was told that we'll be here to go through the first part of it, but not the last part of it. But there's a shutting coming, and I'm not doing this to terrify anybody. What this is meant to do is seek and pray, you know, that you won't be found worthy of the wrath to come, but that you'll escape the wrath to come. And so I know that I've seen like the oceans will walk. And I know with all the rains that have been going on here, it's eroding the soil because during Jacob's sorrows, there's a worldwide famine that happens. And the only one that can make it end with promises of anything is the Antichrist, because I saw it on the TV and in my dream. And I might share that one later. I don't know. I'm still debating because it kind of freaks people out. But I got scriptures with it. And so, while the oceans walk, I know Iceland's not going to be ice. I know there's a polar tilt coming, and Africa's already doing its thing. When these things take place, I honestly really don't know. This is why you need to be ready, and you need to pray to be found ready. Because I was given a hint that once the people that are in right now for president, that's running the nation where it's at, once the true hearts of the people are shown with the corruption, once it comes back, and it will, I don't like saying that because I'm telling you it's going to happen. Once it does, this is when the shut-in is going to start, and I'm not sure how it's going to start, but I know I've been told, be ready. We're packed, and I've been told, be ready to move when I say move. I also know that there's people that can't go with me that are in my life currently, because I was also told that as well, that my current season is coming to an end for this, that my siblings and I are meant to leave this area and go into holding, and for whatever purposes God purposes it for, I don't know. But I do know that the changes that are coming are huge. I also have another thing where why I told somebody, I think it's like I'm a gatekeeper. It's really weird because, or a watcher, just simply because, not the actual literal ones, but a sort of them, because my mom, when she passed, I had all these crazy dreams and visions, you know, with her coming through the door. I've talked to angels. I've fought demons in my sleep. And so the weird thing was I used to work as a waitress with this one waitress named Rosario in New Mexico and Deming, and she was an older waitress, and she was like a mama figure, but not at first. At first, when I started working there, we didn't really get along, and so it's because weathers are lazy, weathers are no good or whatever, but I remember her fondly just simply because she was a force to be reckoned with, but at the same time, she was one of the best friends I had ever made. And so when we were working our long shifts together and we were scheduled to get off at 11, a lot of times we didn't get out of there till 1 or 2 in the morning, just because of the way people hired people who didn't show up and stuff. We had to make up for it. And so after several years of this, because I was always swing shifts 3 to 11, well, she eventually moved to mornings because she wanted to be able to be home in the afternoon for her grandchildren, which is fine. And so I finally had to leave because after 7 years of not making enough to survive, I had to go find another job. And in Deming, the only type of jobs there were jobs that offered you 12 to 13 hour shifts, hardcore jobs. So I went to a pack-off company. It was a food processing plant that I worked at. And during this time one night, I have this dream. And mind you, as far as I knew, Rose was still at the restaurant in the mornings. And so I have this dream. All of a sudden, I'm in this supermarket and I'm over by the freezer section, and I'm reaching in to try to get something, and Rose comes into the door and she looks at me and I smile at her. And this was like, this dream happened shortly after I lost my mother too. And all of a sudden, because see, Rose had become like a mother to me in real life. She had started taking care of me and things after my mother died, like trying to make sure I was okay, trying to make me eat, trying to do this, trying to do that for me, until she moved to mornings and I kind of missed her. And so In my dream, we're in this supermarket, and next thing I know, she's telling me, Mija, I have to go. I knew what that meant because it was a final goodbye. It felt final, and I started crying and crying and crying. I'm like, you can't go. No, it's no. And I was like, no, you're not. I'm not losing another one. No. So I grabbed her in my dream. I grabbed her arm and I yanked her back to me. And I said, it is not your time yet. You are not going. And so I woke up disturbed from that dream because I was crying because I just barely lost my mother. I'm getting over that grief and learning how to accept another person in my life to role model me when I never had role models. And so I'm crying. I'm like literally bawling in this dream, and I wake up bawling. I'm like literal tears down my face and everything. And I'm shaken to the core, and I couldn't talk. I couldn't explain it to my family. They were looking at me all worried and everything. So I had to call my old manager who was still there, and she happened to be working like in between swings and mornings. And I asked her, I said, she goes, what's the matter? She heard I was really, really, scared or whatever, just in tears. And she goes, what's wrong? What's the matter? And I said, I had a dream about Rose. How's Rose? Where's Rose? She goes, Rose. She goes, oh, Rose. She goes, she goes, I don't know. She was working morning shifts, and then all of a sudden she took time off, and she hasn't been here in a long time. And she goes, what happened? And I told her my dream, and she goes, what time did you have this dream? And I said at 2:30. It was at like 2:13 in the morning. And she goes, hang on, I'm gonna call her family, try to find out, and I'll get back in touch with you. And so I'm waiting, and half of a day goes by, and all of a sudden, she gets back in touch with me, and she goes, what time did you have this dream? I said at 2:13. She goes, well, Rose had breast cancer, and she had gone in for aggressive treatment, and on her last treatment, when she had gone through surgery and she's going through aggressive treatment, her heart stopped on the table. And she said right at 2:13, when you had that dream where you yanked her back to you, her heart started again. And I was like, oh my gosh. And she goes, yeah. I said, was she okay? She goes, yeah, she's good now. She made it through her last chemo treatment, and so far she's in recovery. Well, I've had this strange thing happen because then I also had another person that I did this to too. There was another man that used to come in, and he had this yellowish cast, and I told his family, I said, you need to go get him checked. I believe he has cancer. And it turned out he did have cancer, but they were able to catch that too. And then there was another man that I worked with, and I grew up with his kids. We grew up together, and then him and his wife got divorced. I hadn't seen him for a while until later. I'm all grown up, and of course, he was what they termed an old drunk. He was drunk, and he came to work drunk. And so we're talking, and all of a sudden one night I have a dream about him, that I'm visiting him at his home to pray for him. And the house is kind of sunk down into the ground, and the beams are really low. So he goes to stand up real fast, and he hits his head in my dream and passes out and has a heart attack on the way into the ambulance. And so all of a sudden I wake up and I see him the next day, and he's trying to talk to me. And I said, look, you need to know I have dreams and visions. And he started laughing at me going, okay, dreamer girl. I said, I had one about you. And he got silent for a little bit, and he goes, what? I said, you need to go see a doctor. I said, you need to see a doctor right away. Well, I don't know what he did, but this was before my mother had passed when I told him this, and he was mocking me. And then all of a sudden, my mother, when she passed, we were at the restaurant reliving the memories in her life. I was trying not to cry. My brother was trying not to cry. We were talking with my manager, and all of a sudden he comes up, this guy, and he says, hey, he goes, I'm sorry about your mother. I'm sorry about loss. She was a beautiful soul. She was a good person, and the world lost someone when they lost her. And of course I'm going to start crying and bawling back then. And he looks at me, he goes, but I want to thank you. And I said, why? Why do you want to thank me? Why are you here? And he told me, he said, because I went and got myself checked by a doctor like you said. And he said where the cancer was that they found, if they had not got it from, I think he said his spine, it would have taken root in his spine and he would have been dead in a couple of months. But because of the fact that he got checked and he listened to me, then he was able to get it removed. And as far as I know, he lived in remission too. Guys, I have to let you go, but thank you for joining my Campfire stories. You have a good evening.